Welcome back to the second segment of the TD show. First segment was jam-packed. Second segment is going to be just as full. First thing we want to talk about before we get going is our poll. We got a Facebook poll up. Which team do you think is most likely to win this weekend that won last weekend in a wild card game? Pretty even split. 29% say New Orleans, 29% say Indianapolis, 29% say San Diego, and the shocking one, only 14% say San Francisco, who's the only team that's favored this week as a wild card winner. What do you think about that? And what else we got on the NFL right now, TJ?
I think it's crazy that people are picking everybody but the favorite, but oh well. Something I wanted to get back to real fast. You've heard a lot of talk this week that it's a do or die time for Peyton Manning. You know, he's 9-11, I believe, in the first round of the playoffs. And he has to face a quarterback this week in Rivers that I mentioned is 3-0 against him. And then after that, can you imagine the storylines if he wins? He's got to face Luck, his replacement in Indy, or he's got to face Brady, who most people believe is the better quarterback between the two because he's won all the Super Bowls over Peyton. And something that I found out this week that surprised me is that Manning has actually won a Super Bowl since Brady.
Yep.
Brady's 3-5 in his last 8 playoff games. So he probably has just as much on him to win this week and then against Peyton as Peyton has on him. I know I heard people talking this week saying that you almost, instead of saying that Peyton Manning's the greatest of all time, you have to put the asterisk in there that
have to put a but.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I heard it this week.
Peyton Manning is the best quarterback of all time, but
or the greatest regular season
You're
quarterback
right.
of all time. Here's the thing: this year, if it comes down to a Peyton Brady showdown, they're coming to Denver. Peyton doesn't get to play Tom Brady at home very often. Normally has to travel. He's got the weapons this year. If it comes down to that, I like Peyton a lot. We had a question regarding Peyton Manning on the Twitter feed here. Let's get to that. If Peyton and the Broncos do go to the Super Bowl, do you think Peyton will retire after this year?
No way. Too many weapons around him. You have more defense coming back next year. I actually think his odds of winning a Super Bowl are greater next year than they are this year.
I agree with you. And here's the thing. Until Peyton gets to the point where he just can't do it, he's not going to quit.
Yeah.
He's not that kind of person that says, well, I met my goals, I'm quitting. For him, it's all about what can I do next week. He's going to get bored when he quits.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of young talent
on
the team, too. So if they can just get that defense middle of the road, I feel there's a 3 or 4 year span there where they can put up a lot of points and win Super Bowls.
We've got a couple more questions. We're going to get to those before the show's over, so stick around. We'll get to them. Trey, I'm reading your question here, and that's something we really want to talk about, both of those things, before the show's over. So we will get to those. Don't worry. All right, time for our new weekly segment. We know TJ likes to give out guarantees. Let's hear it now. A strong words from a manly man.
Now, time for strong words from a manly man.
They say he has grit. I'm under the man's grip.
If you're looking for trouble, I'll accommodate you. Otherwise, leave it alone.
All right, here's my guarantee for the week. And some might view it as kind of a lame guarantee, but with all the talk and rumors this week, I believe Peyton Manning defeats Phillip Rivers this week and then goes on to defeat either Luck or Brady despite the Broncos' terrible defense. And that's the thing. Well, people say, well, he's probably going to be favored in both games. And, yeah, he might be favored, but I don't believe anybody believes that he's going to go beat Rivers and then beat Luck or
That's
Brady.
the thing. Everybody believes he's great, but there's just this thing.
There's no faith in him in the
playoffs. If you're not
playoffs.
a Peyton fan, not a diehard Broncos lover, you kind of think, man, is he going to blow it again?
So, my guarantee, Peyton Manning and the Broncos over the Chargers and then over the Colts or the Patriots.
This is kind of a medium term. This is kind of like a CD he's giving you this week. He gave you a savings bond this week.
That's right.
You don't got to wait a whole year, but you got to wait 2 weeks to find out. So we'll see what happens with that one.
All right, and now on the line we have Lucas from Center. Lucas is going to talk a little Tennessee Titans coaching situation with us. How are you today, Lucas?
I'm doing fine. How about you all?
Doing great, Luck. How you doing, man? How's everything in center?
Everything's just fine in here this morning.
Been doing any milking this morning?
Yes.
All right. First question I have for you. We know Mike Munchak got fired this week. However, I believe if Jake Locker doesn't get hurt, they win 10 games and make the playoffs. I believe they beat Jacksonville, Seattle, and Arizona, and he keeps his job. Do you agree with that?
Without a doubt. I mean, Munchak's whole 3 years he's been there has been built on getting an offense that's centered around Jake Locker. And then to have him playing like he was through those first 4 games when the Titans went 3-1 just leaves you hanging on what the season could have been. Because, I mean, the only game that really got blown out in was the game at Denver, and that was in the second half. But, I mean, they were within a touchdown both games of beating the Colts.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
and they lost by less than a touchdown to Jacksonville, Seattle, and Arizona. And you've got Fitzgerald, or what's his name? Fitzpatrick throwing those interceptions. And I believe if you have Locker there, they win those 3 games.
Exactly. I don't doubt that one bit. But without a doubt, they would have been at worst the 6th seed in the AFC this season.
I couldn't agree with you more, Lucas. You've got a little more inside information than we do. I mean, what was kind of the process or the thinking that went on behind getting rid of Munchak? I thought he was doing a great job. I mean, they had a rough season. They lost their quarterback who had been playing great. I mean, he was playing above his abilities, I thought, the first of the year, playing really well. They looked good. I mean, what was kind of the thought process, and what's everybody thinking now about Mike Munchak's firing?
Well, with Munchak and the late owner Bud Adams of the Titans, there was a strong connection. I mean, Munchak's been in the organization for over 30 years.
Yep.
He and Adams had been through everything together. But once he passed and the new CEO, Tommy Smith, took over, I think that's when the team started to take a little bit of a different turn. Munchak, he had his staff built to his exact plan, the way that he wanted it built. And then when the season started to collapse, you start hearing these rumors about how change is coming. And when you had the meeting with the new GM, Rustin Webster, and Tommy Smith last week, they gave him the option, hey, we're going to give you a new deal, more money, but you're going to have to restructure your whole staff. And I commend him for stepping up and saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Everything that I've got going here for me is built with this staff that I've got.
Yeah, you got to like him being a stand-up guy and taking the fall on that one.
You touched on something there, Lucas, that I want to ask you about. It seems like if you have a borderline decision, because, I mean, we saw that they didn't fire him right away. So, obviously, there was they hesitated there. Seems like if it was a borderline decision, you'd keep a guy who had been in your organization for 30 years.
Exactly. I mean, you're going to have to be paying him for the last year of his contract anyway, so why not just give him that at least one more year to get things right?
Right. You know, he took a terrible I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And, I mean, you're banking on Locker being healthy, so why not? I don't see Locker, if this next year is going to be his last guaranteed year as well, so why not let him just see how it plays out?
Yeah, you took a guy who had a terrible situation, lost his quarterback who I already touched on was playing so well, lost your owner, all in the same season, and I mean, it still was, relevant. They still they were out of the playoffs there for a long time, but they were still winning games, and they were still in close games when they lost. I didn't think he did a bad job at all, and I didn't necessarily agree with that firing at all.
Yeah.
Just one last question before you go, Lucas. I think it's commonly believed now that Chris Johnson and Kenny Britt are probably gone now. Those were used to be your 2 biggest playmakers on the team, and now you've let go of the head coach. Are they just in a complete rebuilding stage now?
I don't think a complete rebuilding. I mean, you look at your receiver, you've got more than quality replacements to step up and take Kenny Britt on. You've seen it throughout the season, Kendall Wright and Justin Hunter. With Chris Johnson, I do think that they're going to have to draft a back somewhere in this April's draft. I mean, mid to late round, at least to complement Sean Green. But I do think that you're correct. Kenny Britt and Chris Johnson have probably seen their last days in Tennessee Titan uniform.
just real quick, since you touched on them taking a running back in the draft, do you see Trey Mason as a big-time NFL running back? I mean, I know he's not real big, but, I mean, you're seeing a lot of these small but thick-built running backs now.
Yeah, I think he can be a serviceable back in the league without a doubt. As far as where he ranks among the other backs coming out, I have no idea on that, but I do think that he'll be a serviceable back in the league.
One more thing before you go. Where do you see the Titans going with their first pick in the draft this year? What do you think they're going to look for? Do you have any ideas about who they might be targeting early in the draft?
I don't have any individuals in particular that I figure that they'll be going after. I think with the 11th pick, you've just about got to take the best available defensive player, preferably a lineman or an outside linebacker.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Their pass rush is, when you take away Jarrell Casey, it's non-existent. I think you got to take the best defensive player available.
Yeah, when you don't have an explosive offense like they won't have, you've got to build your defense.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, we thank you for joining us today, Lucas.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
It's good to have Lucas on. Got a lot of insight on the things that are going on in the NFL. Does a whole lot of research. Knows a lot about the inner workings and the back door side of the NFL. What's going on in the back rooms.
That's right. And I have a hard time believing that they let Munchak go. I mean, I really feel like if Locker's there, they win those 10 games and make the playoffs. And you can't fire him.
No, you cannot fire him. And I mean, like I said, they had turned that thing around. Locker was doing so well. Kind of a weird fire for me, especially waited a week and a half and then fired him. It was a weird deal. But I commend Munchak for being a stand-up guy. If that's the situation, exactly what happened, and not walking out on his longtime buddies and the guys he built his team around. So
for that matter, if they wanted the coaching staff gone, they could have done it themselves.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had to make him do it.
Right.
They would have had to make him get more money just to have it happen. Next big thing that happened this week, we announced the Hall of Fame inductees. Lots of stuff to talk about, a lot of controversy, even some things that we might touch on later, won't get to in this segment. Whole lot of controversy. One of the most exciting announcements of Hall of Fame people, and at least thought-provoking and conversation-inspiring that I remember in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the second best part of the off season, I guess. You got your winter meetings, and then you get this in January. We saw Maddox, Glavin, and Frank Thomas go in the big hurt. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that you can deny that either three of these were surefire Hall of Famers. Maddox and Glavin, easy first ballot Hall of Famers. Let me give you the stats on all three of those. Greg Maddox, 355 wins, 3.16 career ERA, 5,008.1 career innings pitched, a 1.143 WHIP, pitched 23 seasons, had 371 strikeouts. His postseason record, pretty good, 11-14, 3.27 ERA, 198 postseason innings, 125 strikeouts. He pitched in 23 postseason series. Tom Glavine, not almost as good as Greg Maddox, still easily second best pitcher in this class. 305 wins, 3.54 ERA, 4,413 innings pitched, 1.314 WHIP. He pitched 22 seasons, had 2,607 strikeouts. He pitched in 24 postseason series, had 143 postseason strikeouts. He was 14-16 with a 3.3 ERA. Frank Thomas, I remember growing up watching Frank Thomas, watching the Big Hurt play ball. I had bats with his name on it. I mean, I loved Frank Thomas when I was a little kid. I'm glad to see him make the Hall. His stats: he had 2,468 hits, scored 1,327 runs, 521 home runs, 1,704 RBIs, 301 batting average, 9.74 OPS over 19 years.
Yeah, two of the things that stuck out with me on Maddox is that he issued fewer walks than he started games in 7 different seasons. Now that is impressive. And then, of course, he had an ERA below 3 in 7 years.
Yeah, 1.1 WHIP over a career. If you don't follow fantasy baseball or follow new stats, that's walks plus hits per innings pitched. So every inning that he pitched, he had 1.1 hits or walks, which that's a great career stat.
Yeah, and something I thought might hurt Frank Thomas is the fact that he was a DH. He's the first DH to get in,
Yeah.
and I thought that maybe he would be connect. I mean, he was a big guy. I thought maybe he would be connected to the PED steroid users, but I guess since he was a big guy when he came in,
Yeah.
that just kind of fell by the side.
Frank Thomas, he had sort of your stereotypical big batter career. Started off huge guy, stayed strong, tapered slightly towards the end of his career. No huge fluctuations ever. Never rumored to have been doing any kind of steroids, which is something that caused a lot of controversy, I think, in this draft. I mean, this class of the Hall of Fame, and is going to keep causing controversy for probably the rest of our lives.
Yeah, something I want to touch on first. Maddox, 16 votes away from being unanimous. For those that don't know, there's 575 Hall of Fame voters.
574 now, which we'll touch on later.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you why I agree and why I don't agree with Maddox being not unanimous. He was really close to being unanimous, which is kind of surprising because he wasn't a power pitcher. But I believe that helped him because that kind of moves him away from the steroids.
Yep.
So, and the thing about Maddox, he let you get yourself out with the way he pitched, but he was still 10th in strikeouts.
Yeah, but he wasn't a guy that reached back and tried to throw it past you ever. He could get it up there in the 90s, but it wasn't something he had to do, something he wanted to do. He'd rather pitch around you, make you swing at bad pitches. Kind of how he made his living was on the outside corner of the plate and the high side of the plate, dropping those curveballs down below you with the backside slider. And he was a guy that really liked to pitch around you. He didn't want to just try and throw it to you and say, beat me in a race here. He liked the science and the math and the way that he could pick apart a batter and see what would work and what wouldn't work. That's what made him great and what made him an easy first ballot. As for the unanimous decision, it's just stupid. I mean, if you're that good and you've got that many wins, it ought to be unanimous. I see why people wouldn't want to do it. You're only allowed to vote for 10 people. You might have 10 people that you really, really like a lot. You've been voting for years. You deserve to get in, and you would leave them out. I see what you're saying.
Right. My thing is, here's the scenario where you wouldn't vote for him. Say you want to vote for the 10 best players, but you've voted for Jack Morris for 14 years, and you believe that even though these 10 players are better than Jack Morris, you believe he's a Hall of Famer.
And it's his last chance.
Yeah, you can't give up on that vote for Jack Morris. So you say, well, I know Greg Maddux is getting in the Hall of Fame. So you take Greg Maddox's name off and you put Jack Morris's in. We saw this with Tim Kirkshin. He said that he thought Schilling was a better pitcher than Jack Morris, but he left Schilling off his list so he could give Jack Morris one.
Because he knew that Schilling had more years where he could vote for him. Schilling,
right.
He would have voted for him next year.
And the problem with this is 50% of the voters used their 10 votes this year.
Mm-hmm.
So make it unlimited. If somebody's a Hall of Famer, they're a Hall of Famer. Who's to say that there's only 10 Hall of Famers on a ballot in 1 year?
Yeah, you can't fault somebody for when they decide to retire. You can't help it that maybe you decided to retire the same year as Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, Frank Thomas, a lot of other great pitchers. If you were in the same generation as them, it's not your fault that you retired the same year as 10 other great players.
And conversely, I believe that any argument like so-and-so didn't get in unanimously or wasn't a first ballot vote, like DiMaggio, Ruth, Aaron, Mays didn't get unanimous votes. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is more ridiculous argument than what Dan Le Batard did with the vote. To not vote somebody in the Hall of Fame on the basis that somebody else didn't get a unanimous vote is beyond me.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Who cares? I mean, honestly, I could care less if you're first ballot, if you're they don't write up on the wall in Cooperstown, got in first ballot with all these votes. They tell what you did during your career. The things that happen after your career, it shouldn't matter. The things you do when you go home, it shouldn't matter. I think it should be how much production you had on the field during your baseball career.
And I touched on Dan Le Batard. For those who aren't familiar with what he did, he came out Thursday, I guess it was, is when the results were announced. Mm-hmm. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday.
He came out and said that he had gave his vote to Deadspin, a website, and they had voted, and he used their top 10 as his top 10. And then we saw last night, I believe it was, that his vote was taken away.
Yeah. Just to clarify, he had came out earlier and said Deadspin was looking to buy a vote. They wanted to buy someone's vote. He did not accept any money. He did this solely to try and get a conversation started to change the way that we vote people into the Hall of Fame. Did it for free. Didn't take any money. Don't want to get any kind of confusion there. A lot of people are against it.
Right.
You might be against it. I don't mind it at all. I mean, what's the difference in that and me calling up my buddy and saying, hey, what if you're friends with Tim Kirchin and you're a baseball writer and he's your best friend? You call him up and say, Tim, what do you think about this? What's the difference?
Here's the argument to be made against it. That by doing this, he made the attention more on himself than the process. But either way, whether he was trying to get to the attention on himself or whether he was trying to get the attention on the process, he got the attention on the process. And that's the argument Tim Kirchin made. And you know, we saw in the USA Today where the vice president of the Baseball Writers Association has actually done the same thing since he's been voting. Every year he invites people to a Mexican restaurant. This is in the USA Today. His name is Jose de Jesus Ortiz from the Houston Chronicle. He's the vice president of the Baseball Writers Association, and he posted on his blog back in 2007, I hope you can come join me and a group of baseball fans to discuss the ballot and fill it out together. Ever since I earned my first ballot, I vowed to always fill it out with the help of guidance of the readers who know as much and sometimes even more about the history of the game. Last year I filled it out with a Texas Supreme Court judge and several big-time lawyers in the town and my father-in-law. And the reason that the Baseball Writers Association gave for stripping Le Batard of his vote is for transferring his Hall of Fame ballot to an entity that has not earned voting status. Now I'm guessing that Texas Supreme Court judge, those big-time lawyers, and his father-in-law haven't earned that right either.
Yeah, and he did not give his ballot away. He didn't send it off and say, y'all fill this out, give it, and send it in. He kept the ballot. He took their poll results, did exactly what this guy did on a greater stage. Here's the thing. Deadspin has been known to come down hard on some of the ruling organizations in sports. They don't necessarily have the best reputation with those organizations because they report things to try and make change. And that's what Dan Le Batard was trying to do here. I don't have a problem with what he did at all. I think that what this guy did was exactly the same thing as what Dan Le Batard did, and we're not hearing any kind of outrage about that, and he's in the ruling body. I don't think that Dan Le Batard's vote should have been stripped, and I think it should have been counted.
Right, and here's the thing. His ballot was a good ballot. Deadspin, or his ballot, whichever you want to call it, he signed it, he sent it in. It was still his ballot. It was a good ballot. It was 2 votes different from Tim Kirchin's, and one of them was that it had Schilling instead of Morris, which Tim Kirchin admitted that Schilling was probably a Hall of Famer before Morris was.
Yeah, Tim Kirchin admitted that ballot was probably better than his ballot, but he was trying to get Morris in. Another thing, let me just say this. Nissan has recently given away their Heisman vote. They let the fans vote on their Heisman. The Heisman, I would say, is almost a more secure trust, a more tight-knit group than the Baseball Hall of Fame. Baseball Hall of Fame has been around a little bit longer, but the Heisman, they go by so many more strict guidelines. You only pick one every year. Only one Heisman that can be voted on every year, and they look at everything in their life. If those people have done anything wrong, they can't do it. There's no outrage towards Nissan and that company. Their Heisman vote's not being stripped.
Yeah, and something I want to touch on. There's so much that could be done or needs to be done to fix this process. I mean, you've got people who used to write about baseball, who still get their votes, that haven't wrote about baseball for 10 years and now write about culinary activities. Yep. They write about cooking food, and they supposedly know more than Bob Costas, Vin Scully, all these other people who do not have a vote. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, the process is flawed. We all know that. We're about to run out of time. Before we go, I'd like to tell you the 3 other people got voted into the Hall of Fame this year were all managers. Joe Torre, Tony La Russa, Bobby Cox. Joe Torre, we know what he did with the Yankees. Those are his most successful years. Was 12 years there, won 6 pennants, 4 World Series titles. He won 1,173 games as in managing, and with the Yankees, 2,325 games all throughout his career. Tony La Russa bounced around, had 3 different teams: St. Louis, Oakland, and the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, we all deserving.
All deserving. My personal favorite, Bobby Cox, 29 years, 25 of those with the Braves, started and ended with the Braves, had 4 years in the middle where he went somewhere else. He had a 5.56 winning percentage, 5 pennants, 1 World Series title, 4th most wins all time. What he's most famous for is his ejections. 158 most ejections of all time. 158 times he was thrown out. Also the only manager to be ejected from 2 World Series games. The first was an accident. He threw a helmet at a fence, went over the fence, got ejected. Second time, Marquise Grissom was still in second base, clearly safe. Replay shows it. He argued it and got thrown out. I'd like to just share a quote with you. Jeff Francoeur got threw out of a game one time and asked Bobby Cox what to do, and he's like, I'm like, what do I do? Bobby said, go have a couple cold beers, get in the hot tub or something to relax. Then you'll probably have to write a $500 check. Or you can do what I do, write him a $10,000 check at the beginning of the season, tell him to call me when they run out of money. So he knew he was going to get thrown out. He wasn't afraid to stick up for his players. Everybody that got voted in was well deserving. I just wish there had been a few more people that could have got voted in.
We're going to go up against a break here, but when we come back, we'll have former coach Mary Lou Feast on. We'll talk a little Class A, but after we talk to her, we'll get back to Biggio, Bonds, a couple other PED users that didn't get in.
Rafael Palmeiro, Sammy Sosa, a couple other people. We'll have a special guest call and talk to us about who he thought should have came in. Don't forget to stick around. We're going to be talking to Mary Lou Feast, former coach, as soon as we get back. Thanks.